Adam Gust, and we're honored to have you here. He's a great addition to the Life Through Rhythm community. I just love everything Adam's about. He's overcome obstacles. He's on a mission. Just an amazing person. And so much of what he does complements his drumming. And as we say, like, who you are as a person is who you are as a drummer. And of course, your drumming influences who you become and affects everybody around you. So what Adam's doing, it just complements that so much. And I love, this is awesome people know awesome people. And this community is just amazing, right? It's like there's so many great mentors here and people of all ages and all levels and all that. And we really just share like a mindset. And that's why I think, Adam, so excited you're here today. And I think you just complement that so much. So a little bit, Adam, I'm going to let him take it away for if anybody's not familiar with Adam and what he does. He's done so much great work. So he's based out of Los Angeles. He's been 20 plus years of being a pro drummer, studio live. And he does something called Somatic Experiencing Trauma Practitioner in Training. So we're going to find out about that and how that can enrich your drumming and your life. I saw his TED Talk called The Science of Groove.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that was actually my first intro to you, so check that out. He's an Oxygen Advantage certified breath instructor, which is fantastic because breath is such a big part of just drumming and movement. We're going to get a lot into that today. And he's also certified wellness performance coach, which I love. I want to hear more about that. And drumming is wellness. As we say, your best self through drumming. It's such a tool and such an amazing gateway into becoming, the best of who you are. So fantastic. Adam, welcome. We love you here, and go for it.
Man, thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate that kind introduction. Yeah, it's great to see you all. I'm really here to talk about something that I've noticed I'll just go ahead and say it. That's something I feel is missing in the drumming community. And I feel like Chris is really tapping into it with the work he's doing. I actually found out about Chris through a ChatGPT search. I was like, who the heck else is looking into this connection between kind of embodiment and kind of grounding and this? And Chris's name came up. So yeah, so appreciate Chris for kind of bringing kind of modern approaches to embodiment into the forefront. So yeah, I'd love to start off with sharing a video. It's a quick 90-second video, just kind of lets you know a little bit about my background and kind of how I've gotten into what I feel is a unique approach to drumming.
And we're all growing our story. So everybody's going to get a little more familiar with Adam and his story, and totally agree with everything you said there about just kind of reinventing the way we approach drumming and modern education and just staying inspired and growing, right? So
yeah, totally it's overdue. Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, I'll just play this quick video, and if there's any questions about it, we can address them, or I'll just start talking about stuff. I'm Adam Gust, professional drummer and public speaker. I've witnessed incredible advancements in the scientific understanding of our brain and body system, especially regarding our vagus nerve. Why? Because drumming relies on a deep connection between brain and body, intention and action. Drummers call this connection a groove. I was honored to speak about my work in the first presentation about the vagus nerve to appear on TED.com, and I'm excited to help you find your groove by sharing my transformative journey with other rhythmic practitioners, those of us with a heartbeat.
Enjoyed that.
Oh, okay. Cool. Right on. So that's just kind of the gist of where I've been, and I've talk about where I am now and where I'm headed, I think, because there was this moment where I had an accident with a glass door on a gig. I talk about it in my TED Talk, and I ended up having these tension problems as a result. And it lasted for 6 years. And I had this kind of antiquated idea medically and physiologically of what was happening. And finally, I hit this point where I was like, man, these kind of traditional classic ways of approaching healing and wellness weren't working after 6 years. And it was really alienating me from myself and my community and my ability to really kind of fulfill my professional obligations to my bands, to the people who would hire me. And so I took this cruise ship gig and left and read a lot of books and just like, what the heck's going on with me? And I had this moment where I realized that this tension in my arm was actually a memory of my accident. And now this is really counterintuitive. Like, wait a minute, how is your brain stores memory, right? And it's like, well, it does, and also the body stores memory. Essentially, our nervous system is a recording device. And that might sound woo-woo or counterintuitive, but a lot of current research, especially over the last 30 years, has indicated that our nervous system stores memory in a way that our brain doesn't understand. Our brain is essentially stuck inside this dark hole that is our head. And I mean, so our brain, it only really sees or feels or hears what it has access to through our body. And so much happens in between our body's perception of a stimulus and before that stimulus reaches the brain. And so really want to talk about that gap between perception and cognitive processing. So I like to get into this through, if there are any baseball fans, you'll especially like this analogy, because for the longest time, cognitive neuroscience could never explain how does a baseball player hit a home run. Because if a pitcher throws a ball at 95 miles an hour, it takes 400 milliseconds from the time the ball leaves his hand till the time it crosses the plate. And so, okay, well, that's 400 milliseconds. Cognitive processing takes 200 milliseconds. So that's another 200 milliseconds to swing the bat. Okay, and there's a 7 millisecond gap in order to hit the ball fair. The 7 milliseconds, that's about 7 milliseconds. So, I mean, that's like the kind of timing we're talking about for the bat to hit the ball, to even get it in play, not even hit a home run, not even get on base, just to get it to make a fair ball. And so then now, okay, well, what happens if the pitcher throws a curveball? Okay, now we're talking the break happens halfway to the plate. Now we're reducing that to 200 milliseconds. It is impossible, technically, from a classical neuroscience point of view, for a baseball player to hit a home run, but it happens all the time.
It shouldn't even be possible. I remember I heard that once too. It's like, yeah.
And it's like, I guess it's this one of these crazy things. They must be superhuman or something. But something happened in the 90s, which was the technical advancement of functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is imaging that allows us to see how processing happens, how electrical transmissions from the nervous system to the brain happen, and how that processing goes back. And we started to understand better how we make decisions. It's not, to the old model, it's called a cognitive representational model. Everything's understood in the brain, and the brain controls the environment and how it expresses our intention. But we started to learn that this sensory processing has its own intelligence, its own wisdom. And we kind of understood this already with the idea of muscle memory. Like, as drummers, I mean, muscle memory is what we do. Like, there's no way I'd be able to do that, play a double stroke roll, if I didn't already have that muscle memory, and I'm also talking. So it's like, okay, well, what is this muscle memory thing? Because it's kind of contrary to this cognitive representational model, which is 30 years old. Well, we've started to get into this connection of embodiment, which is brain-body connection, and neuroscience. And it's embodied cognition has been something that's really been explaining how the batter hits a home run, how perception makes decisions. And this is really heavy stuff. But so inside of this, between the perception and the brain understanding of what happens, is something called emotion. And so this gets a little hairy because lots of people have different ideas of what emotion is. And emotional understandings changed along with the neuroscience. So I'm curious, what are some definitions of emotion that anyone might even have? Or Chris, if you want to chime in, I have no wrong answers, just kind of curious, what would you say emotion is?
That makes me think Bruce Lee saying, don't think, feel. and try to, yeah, but what is emotion? It could be something you're trying to communicate. It could be an experience, could be something you're going for. Expression.
Yeah. Yeah, expression, going for an experience. Yeah, yeah, all those are valid. I like all of those.
Anybody else?
Innate response.
Yes, great. Innate response. Oh, who said that? Alan? Was that you? Oh man, I like that a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All of these experiential means in the moment. I like that a lot. It's sort of like this idea of presence gets tossed around a lot, and it's like I always like to think like, how long is presence? Like, okay, well, there's 7 milliseconds to hit a fair ball. Like, how long does presence start and presence end? Like, well, because it takes 2 to 3 milliseconds for a message to come from our big toe getting stubbed to our brain. That's like that electrical transmission. Is that presence? It takes the heart 4 times a second to send information on its status to the brain. That's 250 milliseconds. Is that presence? Well, it's like all this is valid. And so I love this just idea of getting into what is emotion, because the classic idea of emotion was the 6 kind of standard classical ideas of emotion. They claim like there are these channels of happiness and despair and frustration, and these are supposedly universal, and that's all getting blown out of the water with our current understanding of what emotion is. And so, like, okay, I can babble about this for a long time. I've probably babbled about it long enough already before we really get to what Chris said, an experience. Like, let's get to an experiential moment. So it's something I've done before with folks, but I think this is the best way to really get this into the body, this understanding of what emotion is. So I'd love it if you can participate or observe, either one you're more comfortable with. I'd invite everyone to put index fingers up in the air. And so, yeah, okay. So now hold this up. We're pointing up at the sky. This is good. And now just close your eyes and wiggle your fingers. And so you're not seeing them, but how do you know you're moving your fingers? You're not getting any visual recognition of this. This is proprioception. You know you're wiggling your fingers because there are proprioceptor nerves sending information to your brain right now. Okay, something's happening, and there's also a message going to the finger to wiggle. So there's this sort of feed forward and feed back. The prediction and the action, the sensory proprioceptors telling us whether we're actually wiggling our fingers or not. And now open your eyes. And now we're getting visual confirmation. Okay, great. The fingers are moving. So this is like how different perceptions are observing this. Now move to 5 fingers. Cool. Yeah, good. And now move back to 1 and keep that 1 up. And so now do that and try to make sure that the index finger doesn't move. So this is just a little added nuance. Go to 5 fingers up. And so, yeah, we're keeping that first finger up. Cool. Okay, good. Now we're going to add a little bit of an emotional response. Most people can do this without observing any challenge, but we're going to add a little challenge to this now. You can go to 2 fingers, or you can look at it as like A-OK. Oh, I like the confetti. Oh man, sweet. Dan's into this. All right. So yeah, now we have 2 fingers up. And now wiggle them and close your eyes. Okay, that feels different than when we did closed eyes before with the index finger. We're getting proprioceptive information from the middle finger now. We're getting 2. Okay, open the eyes again. All right, we're getting visual confirmation that our multiple perceptions are observing this. Oh, this is awesome. I love all the graphics going on. And so now this is going to be the trick. By the way, this does not indicate whether you're a good drummer or not. It's just an exercise. And so now we're going to go to 3, which, yeah, this is peace sign. And now we're going to A-OK. Sorry. So we're just going to go from 2 to 3. Cool. Now we're at 3. And now we're going to do the same thing. Try to keep this middle finger up when we go from A-OK to peace sign. It's a little bit of a challenge. There's a little bit of a dependence in the hand. So yeah, could we go from 3 to 2? And so now let's go back to 3 and try to really nuance that. Try to make sure the middle finger stays up. And then go back to 2. All right, now we're going to get into an emotional response because this is bilateral coordination, same on both sides. Now we're going to go to contralateral, which is different on both sides. Here we go. This is not a frustration exercise. Just notice what you feel is the idea behind it. So in your left hand, do A-OK, and in your right hand, do peace sign. Okay, you feeling that? All right, now go to 2 in the left and 3 in the right. And it's going to be a challenge for a lot of, oh man, look at Chris. Nice. Yeah, good. Okay, yeah, folks are doing it. All right, cool. Now go back to the opposite, 3 in the left and 2 in the right.
That's hard.
And now we're going to,
that's so hard.
Yeah, so but I just want you to observe the feeling. So the proprioceptive muscles and the visual confirmation of it, that's going on, but there's something else going on here, isn't there? There's another feeling going on with this, a little bit of a challenge, and we're going to connect this with emotion in a sec. All right, so now nuance the middle finger in the left and the right and switch back and forth between 2 and 3, and then back to 3 and 2. And now as you're doing this, I would invite you to feel your breath. So in the inhale, your nostril, the kind of thermoreceptors in the nose are going to notice that the inhale is cooler and the exhale is warmer. And if you're not able to do this, just go back, just do bilateral, just go from same in each hand. But if you are able to do this little nuanced challenge, then start noticing what's happening in your body. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Make sure your sit bones and buttocks are relaxed and shoulders are relaxed, and go back and forth, because this can offer an emotional response. So this is the idea. So, okay, cool. So, just kind of process, like, how did that feel? Like, there was something different between 1s and 5s and 2s and 3s, bilateral versus contralateral. So what's happening is the brain is sending out the messages to telling the hands what to do. And so then there's this proprioception, the idea of like actual body position, actual movement coming back through the sensing in the body to the brain. And this is being confirmed visually. On the drums, this ends up getting confirmed auditorily also. Like, so all these kind of sensory surfaces are informing our brain with what's happening. But when it hits a challenge, when the brain sends a message and the sensory information coming back does not match the sensory output, which for other nerds like me out there, this is called an efference copy. The brain actually creates a copy of the message in the brain, and the sensory information is intended to match the copy when it comes back. And if the copy doesn't match, then the scientific word for this is learning. So this is a good thing. Like, when we send a message out and the body doesn't respond the way we want, this is how learning happens. This is how muscle memory is created. And that's a good thing up until a point. There's a threshold where when that sensory information gets a little too challenging, we start getting frustrated. And that's when our shoulders start creeping up. That's when we lose balance.
I was holding my breath. When you said breathe, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad Adam said that. I was frustrated. I'm like, man, why is this so hard? And then, so what you're saying is, like, we're going into the edges. We're going into new, like, I've never done this before. This is new neural nets. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yes. So this is how we learn. And this has everything to do with drumming. This is an isolated kind of coordination exercise between the digits. I like to do this just because there's so much emotional information that gets embedded inside of motor learning that the moment we pick up a stick, there is all kinds of emotional attachment to that. It goes all the way back to the first time you picked a stick up in your hand. And so I like to remove, like, not talking about drumming, do something completely separate, just moving the fingers. But just notice, like, there's something different between going from this, like, the 1s or even like 5s to 1s in each hand, or there are a ton of these. Like, you can go this way. There's the Girl Scouts one is like doing this to this. I like that one too. And then this is hard, going from this to that. So there are all kinds of these, and that's because there's this midline in the hand. There are two different kind of nerve channels that go to either side of the hand, and it's called in-hand balance. And so that's something I'll get into later as regarding drum technique. But so there's this emotional attachment to motor learning. And I think hopefully everyone felt that to some degree. There is some difference between going from this to that. Okay, so that's the idea. So what I'm doing is creating this idea of an emotional attachment to motor learning or muscle memory. Muscle memory is probably the term that we all understand, but I kind of don't like this term because the muscles don't remember anything. I mean, they're just kind of the mechanisms that kind of act out what the nervous system tells. It should be nervous system memory, but that's the term that most people get is muscle memory. But so, yeah, I'm just kind of trying to create this premise that emotion and muscle memory are strongly intertwined. And that's the point of the exercise. So, yeah, is this any questions that come up with this would be great, or offerings for an explanation or anything?
I got a quick one, and Alan, you put a really nice one in the chat. If you could go, I got a super quick one, but this is, so I noticed you play traditional grip, right? And this is, when you said emotion is connected to the muscle memory, we've heard people talk about traditional grip in the past. Oh, this is the way it's always been done. You're faster like this, and it's all nonsense, right? But there's one I heard Tony Williams say once. He's like, you know what? When you play traditional grip, you're asymmetrical. So, this hand is going to twist and this hand's going to go up and down. I've seen some of my biggest inspirations play like this, maybe. So there's like an emotional, what he had said, there's like a different emotional connection to the instrument that he's like, it'll make me think of different ideas. I emotionally connect with my instrument differently than if I were to play match grip. And I thought that is a great way to put traditional grip. It's just like your nervous system is kind of different. You're going to connect with your instrument in a different way. So I'm just curious, because you play traditional grip, is there a bit of emotion into that movement when you approach your instrument in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Any movement is an emotion. In fact, if I were to ask you not to move, if you actually followed my instructions, you would die, because right now your heart is beating, and that's a micro movement. And so if your heart's not beating, you're dead. And so life, emotion, movement, these are all intertwined. And so regarding traditional grip specifically, I'm actually a match grip player. I just really like how traditional grip feels. It's like you have a little bit more dynamic sensitivity because you're dropping the stick, like all the weight of the hand is underneath versus kind of on top. And so it just feels differently. And then the right and left brain process information differently. The right brain tends to be a little more wide oriented, and the left brain is more reductionist. And so the right brain is more attached to the left hand. And so just like you mentioned with Tony, this asymmetry ends up kind of widening and reducing our attentional focus. And so this is
an emotional thing. Yeah. And I found when I started doing open hand, and I'm like, wow, like I feel very different if I'm using my left zone for the verse of a song, and then I'm going into the chorus for the maybe using my right zone, and maybe I'll choose to go traditional. And you got someone like Billy Cobham that he'll go double traditional.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no rules to this thing. How you move is how you groove, right? It's
absolutely. And crossing the midline, like we have this midline that separates the right side's controlled by the left brain, the left side's controlled by the right brain. And the moment we cross over, even in the visual field, all of a sudden we start harmonizing the brain differently. And so that's a whole can of worms. But I do want to get back into how does this apply to drumming? So because I do want to challenge this idea of rudiments, because rudiments were born out of this classical view of kind of cognitive dominance, really. Like the brain holds the key to everything and the body follows. I like to think we used to think the sun revolved around the earth, and now we understand that the earth revolves around the sun. We used to think that the body revolved around the brain, but recent research is really cluing us in that the brain actually revolves around the body, around this processing of sensory information. And so that's that's all fine and dandy. So, some people may have zoned out by now. Let's get to hit stuff, right? Because we're drummers. So what does this have to do with hitting stuff? Well, I mentioned bilateral versus cross-lateral before. And so this is bilateral, just simple unisons. And unison is really what I want to talk about from now on, because this is such an important way to tune the nervous system. Like really, not clams, Not 6 milliseconds, not 10 milliseconds, not 20 milliseconds, unison, like within 1 or 2 milliseconds. Whenever I say unison, I immediately think of Steve Gadd. The way, like, if he hits a snare and a tom together, it's one sound. You know, it just like, his unisons are so beautiful. But let's look at rudiments. Well, you know, what's your favorite rudiment with a unison in it? I'll give you all day because there ain't one. Because it's all alternating. It's all a flam or alternating. And so we're embedding dysregulation into our nervous system with rudiments. Now, it might make sense from a cognitive representational model, something older than 30 years ago, but it doesn't make sense with our modern understanding of the nervous system. So I like to overcompensate for that by really working on unison. And so, okay, well, who can't do a unison? Well, this is pretty simple. All right, well, just like we nuanced, you know, making sure that certain fingers weren't moving, and when we moved positions in the hand, we're not going to move the unison. Let's go ahead and put can you all hear, is that coming through? Click, okay.
Loud and clear.
Okay, so this is a unison. Okay, we're going to do bilateral dynamic changes. Let's get quieter. And now get louder. And really make sure that the unison between the hands and the unison between the click are all staying fairly close. Try to get them within 2 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds of each other. And I'll try to do this while I'm talking, which is a little added challenge. Now, let's be quiet with the hands. And let's bring up the volume in the right hand. And let's keep it a unison. And let's reduce the volume. Now let's bring up the volume.
While keeping those unison is a challenge.
Yeah, while keeping them unison, that's the key. And then just kind of play around with that. Try to keep the unison between the hands and with the click, which I'm probably having varying degrees of success with. So now let's talk about what's going on here. This is a great exercise, and we'll bring this into the feet. Making sure that we're in tune with ourselves, and then when we add the click, we're making sure that we're in tune with something external. Now we're connecting what we hear with what we're doing. And this is an extremely human ability. There's no other species on the planet that is able to do this. It's called entrainment. It's body synchronization with an external resonance. So we have this internal, the proprioceptors, the mental, the processing, prediction of the movement, the sensation coming back to the brain. There's all this internal going on. We had the visual confirmation with the fingers going on. Okay, we're integrating these different kind of perception, there's different sensory abilities, but now auditory is huge. Sound is such a huge sensation, which is why drumming is so powerful. Because sound it takes 60 milliseconds for the brain to process sound. It takes 200 milliseconds for the brain to process sight. So even through evolution of our senses, there's a kind of prioritization of hearing. And the same channel that comes from our ear to our brain stem. The brain stem is the amygdala, which is really threat processing, which we'll get into in a minute. The same channel is also tied into this proprioceptive sensation. It's called the vestibular cochlear nerve. And so it's the same nerve channel. So sound and movement are just inextricably linked. And so that's why drumming is so powerful. And that's this idea of being in unison with yourself in order to be in unison with external has everything to do with playing in a band. Like I say, first, our practice should be making sure when we intend a unison, it's a unison. I want to make unison a reflex in my practice. And that's why I think rudiments are such a problem, is because they actually develop flamming and alternating. And I've had people think, well, this is a unison. The hands are doing the same thing. It's like, okay, your brain might think they're doing the same thing. They're going up and down. But your body's like, man, what are you talking about? The right's going down. The left is going up. It's like they're hitting at different times. It's like, no. It's to our body. This is completely different. So really honing in on the unison is so important. And then tying it into something external is a whole nother layer of practice. So now we're going to bring this dynamic exercise up. I'm going to share screen again. Before I do that, a little idea. So we were like bringing the volume up in the right and then bringing the volume up in the left. Now let's just now we're just going to do accents. Let's do a 3.
So good.
And then
So valuable.
and and make sure that this is just keeping really low dynamic. And so now I like to call these, gets into the 0 rudiment. This is unison. And so now we can take the 0 rudiment, which I call it a unison, and start bringing in all the other rudiments. So an alternating rudiment through the framework of a 0 rudiment would be, let's bring the click back up. Ooh, I can notice my heart's a little racing faster. Public speaking will do that. So yeah, tune in, get my entrainment happening first. And now I'm going to do I'll hear the click a little better with the headphone off my ear. So now we're going to do alternating, sticking in unisons, but with accents.
And notice Adam's nice, big, deep breath before he started. That's something that great habit.
Yeah. Breath is such a complex, dynamic resource for the body. I always like to start off just noticing the temperature change on the inhale to the exhale before we get into how much air you're breathing, what's called tidal volume, or the biochemistry, or the biorhythms. I mean, all that could be a whole hour in itself. But so we're just doing this, making sure that we're in unison with the click and in unison with the hands. Now let's try doubles. Right, right, left, left, right, right. And what we're doing is to make sure that the heels are on the floor comfortably. Weights evenly distributed between the heel and the toe. And trying to triangulate your heels on the floor with your sit bones on your whatever seating surface. Check the shoulders. Well, I checked my shoulders and I lost the double. So yeah, now we're kind of checking in with the body. And so now we're shifting. This is attentional focus. We're trying to keep the unison in the hands. We're adding doubles. We're adding a nuance. And we're also trying to entrain to the click. And this is bringing us into presence. Whoops, I just went ahead of the click because I'm also talking. So I'm kind of testing my bandwidth of my brain, trying to coordinate all this stuff. So these are doubles. Now we'll go to the paradiddle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, and 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. So that's an exercise in the hands. Okay, and so now we're going to bring the same thing into the feet. So then now while I was doing accents with the hands, obviously the stick has to come up. Ooh, we got some multicam action out there. Digging it on Dan. I don't have that level yet. I'm still switching between 2 cameras, but I'll get there someday. So an unaccented note in the feet would be toes, right? And so there are 4 dynamic levels in the feet. And that Mike Mangini podcast you did was freaking great, Chris. I mean, he got into this. I loved what he was talking about. I mean, he is observing the nervous system in a way that kind of came to a lot of the same conclusions I came to by studying the science. So really appreciate where he's coming from. So an accented up level from here would be what Mike Mangini was saying is kind of a midline dynamic level, which is heels. Okay, so this is the next accent level up from toes. And then the next I would call a stomp, which is the foot actually coming off the ground.
For everybody listening, keep going, Adam. For everybody listening, so important and valuable. I love this. Just getting your feet off the pedals on the floor, tapping your toes, and then I guess you'd say tapping your heels, right? So your heels tapping on the floor from your toe is tapping from your heel, and then lifting your whole foot up and down. It's like so valuable. It transformed my drumming. It's kind of tap dancing 101. Right? Man,
absolutely. Yeah. Dom Famolaro says drummers should study tap dancing. I brought up Steve Gadd earlier. He was a tap dancer. So I know whenever I bring up rudiments, I hear folks say, oh, well, Steve Gadd was a rudimental drummer. It's like, yeah, but he was also a tap dancer, which is a whole next level of body balance and coordination. So now there's this extreme. Now the full accent is something I call the leap, which is feet come off the floor and land on the toes. And you hear how the sound changes. So now I'm going to go cycle back down. That's a stomp, heels, toes. So now we're going to, what we did again in the hands, we're going to bring up the accent levels in the right foot, but keep the left foot the same. So heels. So in this, I'm keeping the toe in the left and going to heel in the right. Now the stomp, and then the leap.
And your balance is being challenged on your core.
Yeah,
in your core.
yeah. That's why I really gotta get the multicam together, because you gotta have to be able to see how I'm also compensating for the balance shift, and that's really the biggest part of this. You'll also hear that I went ahead of the click, and this is a way to understand how these different dynamic shifts in the feet result in time changes, tempo changes, and also balance changes. How all this is related, and I'm not even playing the drums. But this is something, well, I'll continue with this exercise, but there's a thought thread I want to really touch on. So, okay, I'll go through this again. So toes, heel in the right, stomp, leap, stomp, heel, toes. Now on the left, toe, heel, stomp, leap, stomp, heel, toe. That's the idea. And so now there's something I want to get into. And there's this exercise that starts getting a little more nuanced with this. Okay, so I'm going to start with heels. Oops, I'll do it slow. So beat 1 is going to be heels together. You'll notice that it's heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe in the left, and heel, toe, toe, heel, toe, toe in the right. And so what we're doing is we're harmonizing our brain with this coordination exercise, but we're trying to keep the unisons between the feet and the unisons with the click while we're doing what I call reflex flow. So our reflexes are shifting according to whether we're in toe or heel or stomp or leap, and we need to maintain unison with ourselves, unison with our external environment while we're doing these shifts. And so this is a way to really dig into a coordination exercise. So there's heels, this is beat 1. Now go to toes together. And now 3 is the trick. So you want to do the heel in the left and the toe in the right. And just feel into that. Notice, okay, now there's some asymmetry going on in the movement of the feet. What's going on in my calves? Is there any tension that arose in the thighs? Like, is my balance kind of got shifted on the seat? Or where are my shoulders at? Check out the temperature on your inhale in your nose. Check the temperature on the exhale in your nose. Did my head lean forward? Did I go into cell phone posture? So this is the body assessment. Anything that emerges from a shift in the body, we want to be aware of. And if it's not serving our attention, we want to correct it and inhibit it. So this is beat 3. Now 4 is going to go toe in the left and then heel in the right. And now we're going to go back to 3 again, and 5 are the same. So now to 5, and then back to toes in both. That's 6. And then we're going to go back to 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. So what we're doing is essentially a 3/2 polyrhythm with unisons. It's like 3 in the one foot, 2 in the right. So now I'll just show you what that looks like on each beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. And then you can double it.
Well, that's a challenge.
So the same thing in the hands. So we can go to fingers and wrists, or kind of I equate with toes and heels. There's a not direct comparison, obviously. But so I would go, so there's kind of this accent between, it's kind of a push-pull stroke. So this is the same idea, like a 3 in the right and the 2 in the left, and then the same opposite. And so once you start doing that, you can hold a 2 in either hand, and you can start doing 3s or 5s, or like a paradiddle would look like this.
Great. You can see how valuable this is to playing, to just expressing ourselves on the drum set, as opposed to being I'm great at playing a practice pad or chord snare drummers. Like, we're playing drum set. We're trying to get out emotions and self-expression. So I see how super valuable this is, and I love it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I mostly practice this way. And then because I play on so many backline kits that I notice if I play here, practice here for 2 hours, and then I go to a backline kit, I feel like my emotional connection to my muscle memory is already like kind of calibrated to this instrument.
Yeah, because people
Yeah.
say E kits to acoustic. That's and how do I go back and forth? So great point. How do you and you find this kind of helps that transition? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And even without pedals, because I always bring my own bass drum pedal, but the hi-hat pedal is usually different. And I've noticed if I practice this way for an hour, like all I have to do is okay, well, there's this exercise, a quick exercise. This is all a little esoteric compared to like playing a drum set, but I'll show you this basic idea. So this is a warm-up I like to do. I sit down at a kit. It's a backline kit, maybe not even my cymbals. And so how do I calibrate myself to the tension in the hi-hat stand, the positioning of the snare? How do I get all this kind of lined up? Well, I rely on unisons. So the first thing I like to do is just put the right hand and the left foot together. Trying to make a unison on the hi-hat. It's still a little fast, sorry. Eventually we'll get up to that. So this just having a right hand unison with a left hand close and a hi-hat it's a hard move. So I mean, once you can do that, that's a good sign. And now we'll bring in basic rock beat. Now we'll do unison in the hands and bring an accent to 2 and 4. And so that's the first step. It's just, okay, are all these in unison? Am I in unison with myself? And am I in unison with the click? Okay, that's level 1. It's like, okay, once I have that, I know I can at least like start the set and not be all flammy and and I would like to mention also that like, okay, let's say there's like Tim LaFave is my favorite bass player to play with, and he has just an insane concept of unison between his left hand and his right hand. Like when he switches from one note to the next, it's like super hyper developed unison in the hands, and it's irresponsible of me to expect him to want to play with me if I don't have that same level of sensitivity to unison in my hands. Yeah, and so it's like that's why I'm like, okay, I got to make sure my unisons are happening here if I'm ever hoping to play with my favorite musicians. So that's the first right hand, left foot, which is cross lateral. That's a tough unison. We'll get into that depending on how much time we have. And then unisons in the hands, and then bring out 2 and 4, and bring it, and then you can start improvising a little bit in the right foot. And then the next level up from this is alternating sticking right hand lead. And then match the right hand and the left foot, which is a trick. And then improvise with the bass drum. And so if I'm at a kit I've never played before and I have this going, okay, now I feel like I got my left foot and my right hand working together. Obviously the operation of the hi-hat pedal, if I have a unison happening, that's cool. And if I'm able to improvise a bit with the right foot without flamming, it's like, okay, I can play a groove. Now the third level up from this is, can I bring the right hand off of the hi-hat to a tom and come back and still play a unison? And so that starts getting into positioning of the drums. So that's so you start moving around the kit. And then when you can start moving around, alternating sticking around the kit, making sure everything's a unison, you've kind of covered these 3 dimensions of coordinating on a novel surface, on a new drum set that you haven't played before. First downbeats, upbeats, and then being able to move around the drums, come back to the hi-hat and make sure that that is a super precise unison, which you'll know right away because the left foot and the right hand, that's a hard unison. So that's the idea.
And I love as Adam moved his right hand off the pad, you probably didn't even notice you did it. You went you kept the breath flowing, and that's something that sometimes we're on the pad and then or we're on the snare or something, and then as soon as we're gonna go for a fill, we're gonna move our hands away. It's like the breath tightens up. So I guess that's something you're just aware of your breath flowing. You're not really...
I really focus on my breath away from the drums. So this idea of like emotional motor learning, I feel like the best way to work with the breath is away from the drums. And that's, I'll give you one more little trick to mess with the breath. So if you put your fingers on your jugular and you inhale for 6 heartbeats, 5, 6, and then exhale for 6 heartbeats. And if you start tapping with a metronome in the other hand, you'll notice that your heartbeat decreases on the exhale and increases on the inhale. This is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Your sympathetic nervous system is activated on the inhale, and your parasympathetic, your rest and digest, is activated on the exhale. So what does that mean? That means that you can control your heartbeat. Depending on if you inhale on 1 heartbeat and exhale on 8, you're lowering your heartbeat. And the heart is the heartbeat. And so we have some control over our emotion just based on how we choose to breathe. And then we can get at how much are you breathing? I don't think we have time for that. Oh, speaking of time, how long do you want to go on this?
I wanted to say this at the end, but like people like Mike Mangini, even probably Tim LaFave, like these awesome people, they give more than asked and go further than expected. So you're just like blowing us away. There's so much value here. So thank you, Adam, for
sure.
We could go 4 hours and take it to all kinds of places. But anything you wanted to just tie up everything, and a couple people got some questions, but it's like...
Well, what do we do with this information? I gave you a little tidbit on just how to work out unisons and how to turn them into something actually playable and usable. Well, so I mentioned rudiments earlier, kind of this intellectual rudiments that we all are aware of. I like to talk about the somatic rudiments. So somatic means the somatic nervous system, and it's of the body is what somatic means. So what are the rudiments that are of the body? And I like to call them the graces. And so it's an acronym. So there's grounding, relaxation, awareness, centering, energizing, and synergy. And so I could spend an hour on each one of those. They're all very dense. They actually come from Esalen Institute, which I've done some trainings, and they've adapted Aikido practices into a Western kind of methodology. And when I heard the graces from, I was like, oh my God, that's a freaking drumming extravaganza of material to work with. Yeah, right, yeah, exactly, the graces. And you can learn about those if you search me at adamgust.com or at adamgust or adamgust.com. There's more information on that. But just one element of the graces is how this relates to coordination. And so I'll say first, so grounding. So if I'll just do this. So this is grounding in the feet. So we're with the G right now. And we're going to do a coordination pattern 3/2. And so we're going to do the 3 in the hands, and we're going to be grounded in the feet. So this is just one tiny sliver of what the graces are, but this is how it relates to coordinating. Oops. So that's 3/2, 3 in the hands, 2 in the feet. And now we're going to go up to relaxation, which is putting the 2 in the hands and the 3 in the feet. And why this is relaxation is because once you shift that, whoops, I'm not hearing the click very well. There we go. So now the 3 is in the feet. And when you go to a 2 to a 3 in the feet, your body is going to shift its orientation to relaxation. And that's when you have to go through the body scan again, check your balance, the triangulation between the feet and the sit bones, shoulders, neck, breathing, blah, blah, blah. So this is 3 in the feet, 2 in the hands. Now we're going to go to awareness, which gets into breath and heart rate and a lot of other things, but the coordination aspect of awareness is going to be the 3 on the left side and the 2 on the right side. So that's 3 on the left, 2 on the right, and now 3 on the right and 2 on the left is going to be centering. And why this is centering is because when you go from left to right, you can go back and forth. 3 on the left, 2, 3 on the right. And when you do this, do the body scan. What's shifting in my body? My body, attentional focus, different parts of the body. My breath is obviously being affected by me talking, but shifting back and forth to 3 and 2 from left to right. That's kind of awareness and centering have a lot of interplay. Now, energizing is going to be 3 in the right hand and 3 in the left foot, and 2 in the left hand, 2 in the right foot. And again, super tune into the unisons. Make sure these are unison between the hands first, and then line those up with the click. And if you move ahead of the click, notice why. There was a reason you moved ahead of the click if this happened. There was some tension. There was some disruption in your intention to stay in time that happened, and it manifests somewhere in your body, and it's up to you to find out where that is. So now we're right. So now we're going to go up to the last one, which is synergy. And this is going to be 3 in the left hand, 3 in the right foot, 2 in the right hand, 2 in the left foot. Whoop. And then go back and forth between energizing and synergy. And now for those who really want to get deep into this, these are the titration rhythms, I call them. I hopefully there's some way to share this with your community or in the show notes or something.
Yep.
But so the 3/2, I was only doing number 5, which is kind of 3/2. And so these are all different gradations of shifting what I call the stressor rhythm. So 2 is the grounding rhythm. And then you can go through these different rhythms. Let's go. I'm going to shift through some of these different rhythms, and we'll start with grounding. So the 2 in the feet. And so 1 would be, so this is half note together. Number 2 is a 7 pattern. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. And so all these rhythms, you can tell like the patterns are slowly getting faster. And so what the idea is, if you can keep grounding, like the one I really like to do. So this is kind of a rock beat. Let's imagine the left hand on the snare, and then do these titration rhythms between the right hand and the left foot. And so I feel like once you start shifting through this unison right hand, left foot, while you're keeping this solid kind of rock beat between left hand and right foot, if you can shift incrementally through these different rhythms, this gets super solid. And so this mimics this idea of polyvagal theory, how this shift in emotional rhythm, how like activation or versus relaxation. If we can shift the rhythm cross-laterally, right to hand, left foot, while we're keeping something solid here, I theoretically, and in my practice, my experience, there can be drastic shift externally, and I can remain composed internally. Like I love this quote. Waddy Wydell was saying, when you get to the exciting part in the song, don't get excited. That's what makes it exciting. And it's such a cool way to explain it, because nice. I think a lot of drummers think, oh man, I'm an emotional drummer. I'm going to get into the music and let my emotions go wild. And you do not want your emotions to go wild. It's like the more composed you are internally, the less you affect the music with your own internal emotions, the more you're honoring it. The more the music has a wider emotional expansion and contraction possibility by being more composed internally. And so if you kind of introduce these different challenges rhythmically, especially with unisons, I feel like you're training your body, you're tuning your nervous system to remain in composure regardless or, independent of what emotional shifts might be happening externally. And that makes you a better musician, I think.
That's so valuable. And it's also going outside. Like all these patterns have a purpose beyond just notes on a page and I'm just practicing rudiments. And I love that you're focusing on your state, you're focusing on energizing versus being grounded, and there's a purpose to everything going on here, which gets you the result that you want and the outcome. I love that. And
Oh, cool.
You had to go outside of drumming to get that, and then bring it
Yeah.
back
Oh,
into drumming. Yeah.
I should mention where this comes from. I mean, I did mention Esalen Institute, but there's this idea of peak transferability. And this is the idea that if something operates at an extreme level, it can be valuable at a less extreme level. Like David Goggins, I don't know if you know this guy, he trains Navy SEALs and he has this methodology for working through challenges. And it's like, yeah, I think a guy who trains Navy SEALs could help me, deal with some challenges in my life. And so, okay, that makes sense. Peak transferability. Well, I'm working with emotional peak transferability. So if we're going to work with emotional regulation, I would want to work with the most extreme levels of emotional regulation. And that's why I'm studying trauma therapy. It's my second year of training in the Somatic Experiencing Practitioner certification, which is a trauma therapy. And it focuses on emotional shifts in the body that have to do with emotional overwhelm, stress, and trauma. And so with titration rhythms, this is all directly from work that I've been doing with Somatic Experiencing International. It's ways to titrate the body to find this level where the excitation happens, the kind of severe emotional response, and then you back off from there. And then slowly you try to increase the capacity. And you just keep go up. Okay, that's a little too much. Let's back off. And then day by day, you keep trying to expand your capacity. And that's what healing is expanding your capacity for challenge. And so rather than psychotherapy, which focuses on meaning, which can work for some people, but can also re-traumatize others, this is an emotional way because trauma actually lives in our muscle memory. I think it made sense when we did this emotional shift with the fingers. There was an emotional reaction that happened when we couldn't do something. Well, that's where trauma gets stuck, is in our nervous system, in our movement responses. And that's why it's so hard to work with psychoanalysis. It's much better to deal with it in the body. And this goes all the way back to childhood or severe responses. Or if you're not traumatized, it just helps you regulate your nervous system emotionally.
And this is like re-scripting in a way, right?
Yeah, re-scripting. The script would be the headline of the incident that caused the overwhelming emotional response. So in the work that I'm studying, you would take the headline and then you would go through SciBAM. These are the tools. We were self-reporting from the participant, what their sensation, what they're feeling, and then ask them about imagery. What images come up? What sounds come up? What episodic memory is kind of memory that's triggered? And so what sensation triggers memory? SciBAM. B is behavior. Then you start noticing, okay, what shifts in the body? The carotid artery for heart rate, shoulders indicate breathing patterns, maybe some self-soothing happens with people with their hands. There are all these cues that are going to indicate if the person's going into fight or flight or shutdown or kind of regulating, and then so A is affect, which is affect is pure sensory information and how it relates to emotion. And then M is meaning, and it's at the bottom. It is the bottom of the hierarchy in a somatic approach to trauma healing. With the stories we make up, all the kind of words we attach, the story we make, falls so far below everything that is happening somatically. We really need to treat the body first before we can ever address really kind of our judgment or meaning making revolving our history.
I love it. And let's go to a couple questions. And I
Yeah.
love that so much of that is where we should be to give us awareness and be in tune with our movements and emotions and how to get the result we want. And how sometimes traditional education is just so misses the mark of that, right? Just no self-awareness, no meaning to it. So I think this is This is bang on with that. So that's excellent. Let's go to Alan first, and and Dan, have your
Cool.
question ready after that. So go for it, Alan.
So you're linking body awareness and flow state together. You're doing a lot of stuff with practice right here, which is great. So I wrote my question in the box, but it's how does this somatic intelligence influence the way you listen and respond to live music settings? So either jamming or performance. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. How does your somatic awareness respond to what you hear? Well, there's two parts to that. First of all, your emotional state dictates how you hear. So an emotional activation in the muscle is gonna make your jaw tense, usually at a level that's below conscious awareness, and that actually puts tension on your eardrum, and it shifts how you hear music. So it's trippy, but it's true. It's like a timpani. Yeah, your eardrum is literally a drum. So if you are in fight or flight or you're teetering on it, the first thing that happens is what you hear shifts. And that can be disorienting. And so beyond that, now we're getting into it's nice to take a kind of therapeutic approach to this. Like, am I responding to what I'm hearing, or am I responding to something from my past? Like, I mean, we've all been in situations where somebody overreacted. And so you can tell, okay, whatever you're reacting to right now isn't now. It's something that happened a while ago, and I'm just sort of like, here in front of you. But and so I think that happens a lot in music. Like, we tend to respond back to, if we're practicing in a way that's embedding emotion into our muscle memory, we'll be responding to what we practice, but we won't be responding to what we're hearing. And so that's why these exercises aren't beats. This is about tuning the nervous system to the point that we can drop an idea into our brain, and we've worked out all the possible coordination parameters in order to execute this rhythm in a creative way. And so once we have that, we have no bias, a 3/2, we can do it in the hands, but we can't do it in the feet. If we have all this rhythmic understanding worked out in our nervous system, then we can hear something, we can imagine how we might respond to it, we can drop the thought, the predictive pattern it's called predictive coding, the muscle action from the brain, and it can go any direction. But if we already prescribed, if we're learning beats and we're learning rudiments and we're learning chops, it's like there's one way to do these things. And so we're going to fall into these kind of prescribed ways to respond to the music. But jamming, trying to do something creative, is doing something you haven't done before. And so I feel like that's kind of a wide response to your question. But does that kind of suit the question, Alan?
It's good. It's the building blocks, building your toolbox, and so, like you said, like being calm, dropping in the creative ideas within that calm frequency. I love it. That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Presence comes to mind also. Like, you have to be present in order to respond creatively and authentically. And the only thing what true presence is feeling. Because you don't feel in the future, you don't feel in the past. So any really deep conscious awareness of sensation forces you into presence. That's what these exercises are. They're forcing you to hear the unison, feel the unison, make unison a reflex between all the limbs, to the point that you can just put that on autopilot and you can put your attention elsewhere, knowing that you have these bases covered that aren't kind of pushing you ahead or behind the beat or causing flamming.
That's great. Pulls us into the present moment. I love that. Yeah, thank you. Dan, you're up.
Chris and I had a little conversation yesterday about timing. I tend to occasionally rush and occasionally drag. And I'm just wondering, how can I use somatics to improve my time when I'm drumming?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, first of all, unison between the limbs. Because if there is some, if you're just going to play right hand on the hi-hat with the left foot playing, I mean, I think that can really help you understand what some of your tendencies are. And so even if your left foot isn't playing directly in the beat, whatever it's feeling, kind of on a balance level, it's having an influence on your timing. And so if the left foot tends to drag, you might be looking at the actual pieces of the body that are making the sound and think, oh, well, it's here. But it's all four limbs are involved in keeping time. And so if everything is in unison, it's kind of hard not to be in time, I think. So, I mean, just in terms of unison, if all the limbs are always in unison, you're going to be centered in the time. And so but there's another element of that, and that's emotional state. The heart rate. If the heart rate goes up, that's activation. So that's going to push you into fight or flight. And then there's a certain threshold where fight or flight becomes shutdown. And there's the threat response cycle, which if we want to go over, I could talk about that. That really has to do with timekeeping. So like a composed emotional regulation, a heartbeat between like 60 and 80 for most people, that's going to keep you nice and centered in the time. If there's unison relationship that's tight between all of the limbs, that's going to keep you centered. So remaining composed and having this somatic coordination between all the limbs, that drastically affects your concept of the beat and whether you push or pull.
That's helpful. I just going back to Alan's question. There's also the being in unison with the rest of the band.
Yes, that is entrainment. And there is some unbelievably deep research going into what entrainment is. First of all, no other species can do it. It's part of what makes us human. It's what made us drummers. I like to think about who was the first drummer. Like, who was that first human being who adapted their environment to express the rhythms going on inside them? And versus like, who was the latest Instagram drummer to do something cool, versus that. So it happened in between tool use, these are tools, and language. So between 150,000 years and 60,000 years is my guess. That's when humans started creating, playing drums to do this. And so I'd like to channel, who was that? Like, what were these changes that happened in the human body that separates us from hominids or, our ancestors? And it was entrainment. That's such a huge part of it. And that's what you're talking about, playing with a band. And that's where language came from, according to researcher Ian McGilchrist. He's claimed music came first and then language. And his support for that is fairly robust, and modern approaches to neuroscience also support this idea. And drumming and voice were the first two instruments. And so in order to playing in a band, it's this idea of entrainment and aligning body synchronization with what we hear. And so that's first, you have to get the body synchronization with itself, the somatic rudiments, and then you need to get it. But I feel like the somatic rudiments need to happen first. Like I've had students like they can't play a unison, but they want to bury a click. And I'm just like, I don't think you get how the body works. Like if you can't play a unison here, how are you ever going to, first in the body, then entrainment, then entrain to the click. And so once you know that you have that, then you know that you've established this channel, this vestibular cochlear nerve is in sync with itself. And once you have that, then you know that what you hear, you can respond to and integrate with. And there's a therapeutic approach to this, in unison with yourself, to be in unison with others. First, you have to make sure you're okay before you can be okay with a partner or a family member.
Sometimes is being led by a strong player in the band they're rushing or they're dragging, and so I got to somehow make sure I don't listen to them.
Yeah. Well, okay. If the stronger player, like somebody who's playing louder, like I immediately associate a stronger player as somebody who has stronger tempo. Because I've played with horn players who have better tempo than I do, and I'm just like, oh, this is brilliant, man. I can just kind of drop my hands and make sure I'm hearing them, and it should work out. In fact, it's funny you say that, because and the first entrainment research was an accident. There were two heart cells, individual cells from hearts that were in petri dishes that were 6 feet apart, and the researchers returned and found out that the heart cells were beating at the same rhythm. And they're just like, wait, what the hell is this about? They're like, they weren't in the same petri, they weren't touching. And that's when they realized there's this electromagnetic field that's about 6 feet apart, even on a cellular level. And the dominant, the one that has a higher amplitude of a heartbeat in the cell, it's entrained to the other. And so that's like on a cellular level, we are built to entrain to our environment. And so, but first we have to be entrained with ourselves, synchronized in unison with ourselves. And once that happens, that opens the door to being able to connect with somebody else.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess we have the most control over it, but you're right. It's the other musicians are there, and it depends what situation you're in. If there's like you hearing that horn player and okay, cool, we're gonna sync up. Or if there's a fight happening, sometimes if one musician's like, I'm gonna do this, and no, no, here's the time, and that's not entrainment, I guess. But I guess if we have it in ourselves, we have the most control over it, I would think, as drummers, and then the band gets it, and then the audience would get it, and then we're all in. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah.
To say that?
Yeah, I like that dimensioning. So that's the body-mind world. So the body first, these are the three layers of this biopsychosocial science, which a lot of this work is based on. So the body, first get it into the body, the psycho, the brain, the entrainment from connecting the auditory and the movement in the brain, and then the world, like connecting with the audience and really having that. And so again, back to this idea of emotion and muscle memory, what we're doing is we're weeding out emotional overwhelm that exists in our muscle memory. And so that's like, okay, if I have something that happened to me, like the first somatic experiencing session I did, I went in because of this glass door accident, and there was something that happened in Catholic school in first grade that was living in my shoulder. And if you had told me this 7 years ago, I would have thought you were out of your mind, but the therapist found it. It's called table work. It's in the third year of the training I do. And she just walked me through this very slow process of attuning to sensation. And she touched my shoulder, and I sat up and talked about this thing that happened in first grade with Sister Esther. And I was like, what? Like, oh, what? I wasn't thinking about it, but the memory in my shoulder triggered the thought. And then we're like, okay, let's go back to the chair. Let's assess, what emerged from that one. And it was just like, here I am 50 years old, and there's some residual tension in my shoulder from something that happened from 6 years old. And so drumming is a way to peel back these layers. I like to think of it like the brain's idea of drumming in the body. Okay, so the body is the tool to do the drumming, according to the brain. But at the body, the drumming is the tool to improve the brain. That's kind of, and so like we're not tools. We are human beings. And so I think it's a better idea to look at drumming as the tool. Like use drumming to make your mind body better. And so if you're thinking of it like using your body as a tool to make your drumming better, that makes sense to practice rudiments, practice beats, practice licks, chops, bubbling, and everything you see on Instagram. But from an embodied point of view, the brain-body connection is the priority, and the drumming is the tool to improve that.
Well, excellent. I want to be respectful of your time, and
oh man, yeah, I get all excited talking about this stuff. So.
Oh yeah, and this is what we do. It's depth. And I like, we say like, we are the drum. Drums are just a character mirror. They're going to amplify anything going on in you. And I love that we're in that space right now, and just awareness and everything, man. You like the entrainment stuff is I didn't know that heart cell thing. That's
yeah. Oh man, there's a study last year in Japan that was talking about entrainment, groove, and dopamine in the brain. And it's like the deeper we get with our technology of brain-body connection, the more entrainment is such a huge part of our humanity, and drumming is an incredible resource in order to explore that individually.
Yeah, which is flow and just becoming our best selves, and having the drums amplify it, because it's going to amplify everything that's going on. So wow. I want to go practice. I'm inspired. I love. So just anybody unmute yourself, and just what's your biggest takeaway today? One thing, I got so many, but one's I love you said about the great bass player Tim LaFave, and you're like, man, if he can put the work into his unison, and he has such a strong time feel, and I have a responsibility to do that too. I just love you mentioned that. So it's even going beyond drums to the...
Yeah, Pat Metheny, like how legato he is, like his unison in his hands. If I wanted to play with Pat Metheny, it's not about who or, there's this it's like, man, you'd better have his level of unison in order to even consider like being worthy.
Yeah,
that's
like
how I look at it.
Step up and do the work and get into the right place, and not being sidestepped, or there's so many roads can lead you so far left field, and then you play in a band, you're like, oh, like this is not what I wanted it to be. And all this, I feel, leads us to the right place, and the place that we want to get to. So yeah, just any valuable takeaways that anybody got from today? Please share.
Yeah, it's Graham here. I think the focus on unison as a grounding point of departure is a very powerful idea.
Love it.
Separation only exists because of unison. And, we all probably tend to focus a lot on separation, independence, etc. But if that unison isn't there, it's not going to resonate fully or appropriately, and internally, but also externally with other band members or the audience. So I thought that was really cool. As I said to Chris, when I found out yesterday you were doing this workshop, my wife is a therapist.
Oh,
And she studied polyvagal theory a lot, and I write on mental health, so I encounter it as well. So when I saw that as a clinical focus or theoretical focus or existential focus for a way to approach thinking about drumming, I thought that is really powerful and very cool. Thank you for developing this.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you,
I
Adam,
think
for the work you
the
do.
problem with today's workshop is it's only an hour and a half. And it should be about 8 hours.
Yeah, thanks. My TED Talk was based on my work at the Polyvagal Institute. It was the first TED Talk about the vagus nerve, and Stephen
Right.
Porges, founder of polyvagal theory, he saw it and reached out to me. We had a long Zoom, and he's been incredibly helpful with my work. And he was like, "You have to study somatic experiencing with Betsy Politan and develop this because there's no one else doing it, and it's such a powerful practice." And so I'm just honored to be able to be in this position. And yeah, it's incredible. Well, man, I appreciate your understanding of it, because polyvagal theory, even like no one even remembers if they hear it once and it leaves their head. It's a hard word to remember, much less how intense the vagus nerve is in regulating our emotions and therefore our motor movements. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you very much. Really appreciate
Oh
it.
man, thank you, Graham. Yeah, say hi to your wife for me, please.
will.
That's so
She had-
cool.
Yeah, she was
She had
hanging
to
out.
step out and work right now, but that's
Yeah.
she really was blown away by just seeing how some of those modulations work within the unison framework. So she was here with the sticks. I was just watching.
Yeah, actually, I've been doing some work with a chronic pain therapist who is like, "Man, what you're doing is amazing for chronic pain." I'm like, "What?" Like, it didn't even occur to me. He's like, "Man, pain has so much to do with emotional reaction. If you can regulate yourself and be present in coordination patterns, that reduces." So I've done some work with folks who are in his process, and they've had some benefits from it. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. Thank you, Graham.
Real quick, thank you. Real quick, actually, we worked in a rehab center for 4 years in the Dominican Republic, and I was like a lay counselor, meaning a listener, someone people could talk to, but I led a healing drum circle, something I had never done before. And I'll tell you, in a few brief sessions, when you talk about entrainment through active listening for people who are deeply traumatized, it was unbelievably powerful. And I was a novice at conducting such a workshop, so I'm sure I could have done it, better. But I have personal experience in a small way with what you're getting at, and I encourage you to continue your good work. Thank you.
Oh man, thank you, Graham. Yeah, I am now in my second year of somatic experiencing. I am just, this is definitely the rest of my life. I am like so on board, and to think like just the connection between drumming and this work is so obvious to me, and like I kind of amazed that I'm the only one doing it, but it's challenging, and so it means a lot to me, was what I'm saying, that you can notice that. And hopefully, Chris, you're heavily into embodiment, and you understand the connectivity with this and community building around it. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Chris.
Absolutely.
Adam,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Adam, do you any sheets on those exercises that you were giving us? So I'm trying to write, but I couldn't write them fast enough. So
Oh, it tried to give you. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, maybe it could even be edited in the final video. I would be even happy to do that just to make sure that they showed up properly. Yeah, I'll send those exercises. Sure. Yeah.
And connect with Adam, adamgust.com.
Hi.
And a lot of people are going to be hearing this, so we'll connect you with people. And Adam is a mentor here, so we love him in this community. We'll do a part 2 and part 3, and we'll go into all those flow and breathing. There's lots of places we can take it, and so much value today from everything, like the feet. And I love you said you started with the feet, and I mean that was so much gold right there. And I love Graham, you'd mentioned, I'd heard it said by drummers, independence doesn't exist. The correct term should be interdependence.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And
In fact, linear drumming is the worst thing you can do to begin. Like, I think it actually, there's no way to even out linear drumming the way to sound like Garibaldi. Do your unisons before you ever think about trying to play like Garibaldi. Because then you know that everything's lining up where it should be, rather than pushing or pull. That's you're actually ingraining dysregulation into your body by not playing unisons. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So I love the theme of today is like having that unison, having that grounding, having that awareness, the scan, just the emotional part is so much. I'm going to re-listen to this, and amazing. So everybody connect with Adam at adamgust.com. He's got tons of value. Watch his TED Talk, The Science of Groove.
Yeah. Want a free session? Today. Yeah. You can book a free session with me. I'm super into connecting with people about this, and it's really an individual practice. I'm happy to speak publicly about it, but the work is really one-on-one because we're all individuals. We all have our own personal histories. So how our biography imprints on our biology is what I like to say.
I love it. And thank you, Adam, so much. You are a valued part of this community. We'll be doing this many times in the future, and go connect with Adam and just take these thoughts, put it into your drumming. Keep going, your best self through drumming. We'll see everybody soon.
Thanks.